What's up everybody, Coach Mills here, coming at you with a brand new Valorant video, and in this video we're going to be breaking down the man, the myth, the legend, none other than Zombs, controller player for Sentinels, one of the best teams in the entire world, and he is not only just an insane trash talker, he's insane at Omen, who has one of the highest pick rates right now. So we're going to be doing an in-depth Omen guide, breaking down Zombs' gameplay to tell you everything that you need to know about how to play this character, how to counter this character, and everything in between. So there's something for everyone, so make sure you watch it to the end. But go to the Game Leap website in the links down below for in-depth advanced VODs, tips and tricks. We got character guides over every single character in the game. So what are you waiting for? Go check it out in the links down below. But without further ado, let's jump into the video. Now, as we know in the game of Valorant, you always need a smoke character. Smokes can not only block off information, but do an array of things that are very, very powerful and essential for the game of Valorant, and we're going to be breaking all that down. But let's kick it off breaking down Zombs' gameplay. So right off the bat on Defense Haven, Zombs is going to smoke the mid window as Omen, and what this allows him to do is it allows him to push up mid and hold across grass with his teammates at a garage challenging as well. Now, this is an absolutely amazing thing that you could do in your games as a mix-up, because not only do you have someone like Arena and Jett in Garage to make a flash-based or an aggressive peek-based execute onto grass, because you're holding this cross angle and enemies can't see you from window unless they want to jump blind through a smoke, have all that inaccuracy while falling, which they're just not going to do. You basically get to have this really powerful cross angle and take control of the entire mid section. And the reason that that's so important is you automatically know when enemies are rotating. You'll be able to see and hear enemies. They only can go A or C, and if they rush anything, you'll hear it. Plus, you can execute a flank much quicker. So this is a really powerful tool and mix-up that you should be using in your games, whether you're on eco or just whipping it out in some random rounds. You can get a lot of value with this tactic. Now, that being said, however, even though he pushes up here, the enemies are not here, and the enemies are actually making an A rush, which they figure out and he hears. And then he accomplishes the most important job as Omen, which is using your smokes to alleviate pressure, specifically rush pressure or push pressure. And he's going to smoke the opening or the entrance onto site from A short. Now, by adding smokes to a point that enemies are rushing, you're disincentivizing them to actually push in, and you're giving the person on point a lot more space to work with because they have a lot less angles to directly contest. And if there's no smokes at all, the enemy just get to walk on with all the information, all the free space, and you basically screw the guy that is just left there being rushed on point. And as Omen, yes, you can use one smoke to make like some aggressive based plays like we saw in mid, or just put pressure on the enemy, but you always want to have one smoke in your back pocket just so that you can alleviate some of the pressure from any rushes or engages that enemies are actually starting. Now, notice particularly with this smoke, Zombs is going to leave some of the smoke feeding into A short with a small amount of gap so that enemies have to actually swing out into open space and they can't get too far onto the point for free without peeking the CT angle. Now, this is all going to come into fruition when the enemy Reyna swings out of the smoke blind, and he's going to dink her and he's going to get a free kill. But if he never would have smoked this angle in the first place, it's no doubt in my mind that the Reyna might have already even pushed all the way up through the point, killed the Killjoy, and pushed CT, because the smoke basically just stalls for so much time, and that's effectively what it did. Then moving on to the next play we need to talk about. Remember that smoke in mid window? You don't always have to push it either. Just using it to put pressure on enemies blocking LOS, and sometimes that makes the enemy exhaust some utility to make a play for mid control when you're not even there. Because imagine you always smoke that mid window and you always walk up, right? Eventually they might flash, rain a blind out a window and jump out, or push grass, or whatever the case may be. They might challenge you aggressively, and if you are getting value doing this like a couple of times, they might just use those abilities for no reason. And if you're not there and all you had to do was bait with the smoke, you blocked off some info, you got them to waste their utility, that could be very powerful, and it always leaves them guessing. Because the thing is, the enemies can't afford to do that every time. They can't just waste all their utility to just jump out when maybe 9 times out of 10 you're not even there. So I would highly suggest consistently smoking the spot, and even when you're not walking up, you can still smoke it. You don't have to do it every single time, but it's still good to do it a fair amount of the time that you're not even planning on pushing at all. Now the thing is, this is costing a lot more on a character like Brimstone because of course you don't have your smokes on a cooldown, but with Omen, you really aren't penalized very much for throwing out an initial smoke because the enemies don't play quick enough for you to actually need both smokes right off the bat, so you do have a fair bit of wiggle room in that regard. Now moving on, I want to break down some things about Zoms' playstyle in particular, and it's a playstyle that I really respect on specifically controllers like Omen. As you see, he's gonna peek a lot of these tiny angles, not to duel enemies, but to gain info, and he's gonna call that to his team. As an Omen, you need to make sure that you're always alive, making sure that you're one of the last people to die, if not the actual last person, so that you can always use these smokes to, you know, block off for a retake, or whatever the case may be, because how many times have you tried to retake a point, and the enemy is playing the long angle, and if you can't block off that angle with some sort of LOS blocking ability, you're absolutely screwed, and it can mean the difference between winning and losing that entire round, and Omen really wants to be one of the final people alive in any situation, any team fight, and Zoms' playstyle really reflects that, where he's not trying to go for aggressive pickoffs or anything like that. Even though his mechanics are good, he doesn't rely on them as a crutch, and often he's just gathering information and setting up unfair advantage duels, which I'm going to talk about in a second. Now he's going to gain some information that someone is in Garage, and he's going to smoke the connector from Garage to C as a disincentive, which is something that we already touched upon, but I really want to clarify so that you understand what smokes do. First off, no one wants to push through smokes. When you push through a smoke, you have no idea where enemies are going to be holding. You don't know if you push out of a smoke, they're right in front of you, or far away, or to the right, or to the left. So you have no idea where enemies are. So first off, you don't want to push through a smoke. Second thing is, if you are holding outside of a smoke and an enemy pushes through that smoke, it's a lot easier for you to kill them because they don't know where you are going to be, but you know that they're most likely going to be coming from that smoke. So basically, putting down a smoke creates an imbalance that disincentivizes people from pushing out, and not to mention you could just randomly spray it and wallbang it, and the enemies would just get absolutely screwed even if they are trying to push through smokes. So it really has a lot of power level besides just blocking off LOS, which is what everyone thinks it's used for at the lower ranks. Now the thing is, you don't have to always use smokes just to execute on a site or use it defensively to prevent a push. Watch how he uses it here in this scenario we're breaking down. He's gonna kill a Cypher A short, and he's gonna get that enemy spike down, and he's gonna instantly smoke off the spike. So any enemy who wanna grab that spike have to literally push through a smoke to get it, making it a really unfair duel. And if they try to do this, it's gonna be a very easy kill on his part. Now, later still, instead of challenging the enemy Silva that flanks, he's simply going to use the smoke to stop their push because he does have the spike. There is no risk involved, and this really personifies a lot of what Zoms does in every single game. He doesn't play for the risky play. He plays safe and forces enemies into consistently bad duels, which is going to bring him a large amount of consistent value that I think every single person that plays a Sentinel, or maybe even non-duelist in general, can really learn from. Now moving on to using smokes to execute on site, you want to make the takes on site as clean and as easy as possible for your duelists. So this means several things. The first thing is smoking off the difficult angles to challenge, like Heaven. Of course you're going to smoke off that because that's a really awkward angle to hold while you're holding anything else, and if you're holding that angle, you have no field of view of anything down below, so it's like impossible to flick or challenge anything else. That is why you need to always smoke off Heaven, the powerful angle that you cannot contest from the ground very easily. Now the next thing that you need to be doing is connecting the point and boxing the point off with your smokes. Look at his smokes here in this example. Notice how he used his smokes to box the site during the initial engage and make it really easy when you swing the back. It is a clear line where the wall and the other wall are connected with the smoke. The thing is, you're not trying to do this deep because you don't want to force your allies to swing out and in so that they can submit themselves to more angles and maybe get caught off in a way that is really hard to refrag. Boxing off the map this way is a very effective way to take point control, and then later on, after you took that point control and your teammates have all pushed up and appropriately repositioned, you can always put a deeper smoke in later so that you can aggressively contest connector. Maybe you want to make sure that no one's on site at all, but that is for later. The initial push should be a box off method, is what I like to call it. This is called boxing off the point. Now, this also brings us to a big takeaway about smokes in general that you really need to understand whether you play them or you play against them. Smoke should be used for a purpose with intent, and that purpose should always change based on position and game state. Maybe you pushed onto point and now y'all are holding close under or even underneath heaven or wherever the case may be. Maybe you don't need to smoke off that power angle heaven anymore, and you can change where you're smoking. Maybe you want to use a smoke for the flank, adjust it to make an aggressive play. Whatever the case may be, you got to understand that it really disincentivizes enemies from pushing, and it can be used in a lot of dynamic ways to give you and your team an overwhelming advantage without mechanical skill involved, just on paper, which is the only way to have consistent and reliable impact no matter what your mechanics are feeling or doing in that given day. But go to the Game Leap website in the links down below for in-depth agent VODs just like this over every single agent in the entire game, plus more. Do yourself a favor, go check it out in the links down below. But I hope you enjoyed the video. That's all I got for today. Thanks so much for coming by. I love your faces. See you tomorrow.